Congressman, good morning. Thank you for making some time for us.
Hey, Tommy, good to be with you. Thanks for having me on to talk a little bit about how we're fighting this virus and trying to get our economy back so we can go to a football game.
Hey, dadgum right, because that's what it's all about. We need to pass some laws to get football back out there one way or the other.
So, Congressman, what do you think the number one question is that's being called to your office, sent to your office, email? What's been the number one question that you've been getting as of late?
Well, for families, when do I get my tax rebate check to help me have some money to get through this few weeks of the virus at the peak? And 80 million Americans got a direct deposit this morning in their account from the Treasury, the tax rebate.
Yeah.
And I think that's the number one question. The second question is for all of our small businesses who are working so hard to stay afloat, having their business just turned off like a light switch. It's how do I get one of these paycheck protection loans from our banks that have the SBA guarantee. And so those are the two top issues, I'd say.
So, Congressman, I did not do direct deposit. I've paid taxes by mail over the years. So for a sucker like me, what do I need to do to get a direct deposit, or how do I go about just getting that stimulus check?
So if you go to irs.gov, they have a backslash. They have a page there called Where is My Check? This is your page. This is where you need to go and upload your direct deposit info for your bank so they can deposit that into your account. For people who don't have a banking arrangement or, a retired person on Social Security, they will send out checks, but they're trying to get this money electronic to as many Americans as possible because it's faster and safer.
Congressman French Hill with us here on the Morning Rush. Hey, I got good news for you. Matt Jenkins, who answered the phone, he got his stimulus this morning. So we're 1 for 3 here in the studio.
Woke up to a nice surprise this morning.
So that was, so they're starting to roll out a little bit here in Arkansas. What's it like in Washington right now? I mean, I'm sure there's chaos in every community, and I know you represent the 2nd District, which is a lot of central Arkansas and our capital city, but it seems like there's just fear gripping a lot of our towns across the natural state right now. What's the mood like where in a place that's supposed to be setting the tone in Washington, D.C. for what the rest of the country's like?
Well, Washington is like a movie set. Obviously a big, beautiful city, but the streets are quiet and people are working from home. And so it's just a very quiet national park today. But, I see grit all around from Little Rock to every small town. I was on the phone last night with the mayors up in Van Buren County, Clinton, Fairfield Bay, Southside, talking about all the things they're doing with their clinics, with their hospitals. And people were upbeat and they were positive. They're following the CDC guidelines for hygiene, and they're proud of their families' efforts and their city's efforts to keep people safe. But I found people upbeat and positive. They had plenty of personal protection equipment in their local hospital at Ozark Healthcare, and their families, for the most part, were safe. And, so I think people were coming together. I think they put their flags out. They know we have a role to play in every household, and that's what's happening across our state.
What would you say? You mentioned the PPP loans, the Paycheck Protection Plan.
Yep.
What would you say to a business out there? And I'll say we've been through it here at the radio station, and the bank we work with, Arvest Bank, we found it pretty quick and easy. And ours has been approved and moving through the system, and we should have our money in the next day or so. That's what the bank tells. My question: what would you tell the business out there right now that's struggling to get the process going? They can't seem to find square one. What do you tell that business right now that needs this more than ever to save their business?
Well, I would say get your payroll organized, the number of people and what they're paid for about 8 weeks, and what your rent, mortgage payments, and utilities are, and go see your local banker. And as of yesterday, 14,800 small businesses have gotten $2.1 billion in loans right here in Arkansas. 14,800 just in Arkansas, almost $2.2 billion. So our banks are open and ready for business. And sole proprietors, self-employed people, independent contractors are all eligible too. And Treasury has given guidance on if you're that small independent contractor working in the home construction business, or you drive, or you're a handyman or something of that nature, their instructions on how to take that payroll information to the bank.
We had a question from a listener come in on our text line. Wanted to know about individual companies and hazard pay. Who's it up to? Because it seems like from the question, it's all across the board, different kinds of companies, not just healthcare, that are paying their frontline workers, whether it's cashiers, stockers, people still in our essential businesses working, whether or not those employees get hazard pay or additional pay at this time. Is there any guidance you can give to the listener here this morning that's wondering about hazard pay for frontline workers right now?
Yeah, every business does that a little differently, but Congress passed funding for businesses who wanted to give paid time off to workers to take care of kids who are now out of school, take time off from work for their own personal health, or because they don't feel safe in coming to work. So the businesses have some form of payment for those sorts of non-vacation time off connected to the virus. But every company has a unique policy on how they're handling that.
What's a real timeline on this? I mean, I know the president's pushing to hopefully get us kind of going at least in parts of the country. Seems like Arkansas, from what you hear from the governor, who's done a great job leading the state through this, is maybe ahead of the curve than a lot of other places, and certainly the epicenters in New York and down in Louisiana and other places maybe a little bit later. What do you think a realistic timeline is for our state to get back to at least a taste of normalcy and back to doing business?
I think potentially we could start to see that selectively in different businesses in May based on the data that Governor Hutchinson is seeing, and it'll be ultimately up to the governor working with our public health officials and our businesses. But I know businesses are planning for increasing their openness, if you want to describe it that way, beginning in May. And I believe it'll be different across the country based on the severity of the public health crisis. So it'll be different in different kinds of businesses, and it'll be different in different geographies. But I think Asa Hutchinson, our governor, is doing a good job pacing that. And as he's paced it down to fight the virus, I think he'll help encourage and pace it upward as we open up.
We're speaking with Congressman French Hill here on the Morning Rush. Congressman, when you look at what Governor Hutchinson has done, a lot of people were asking outside of the state, not necessarily inside the state, for him to implement a shelter in place. He didn't do that, and I think it's paid off. Why do you think his decision-making has been so effective for our state?
Well, I think it's been patient, and it's been focused on hot spots and things that could lead to hot spots. So the idea of bars and restaurants and face-to-face contact, like certain doctors, elective activities or dentists or haircuts, he's tried to focus on that where you could have the spread more easily. And if you're making something in a business where you can maintain the CDC distance requirements, you ought to keep trying to generate revenue if you've got customers out there. So I think he's just tried to use good old-fashioned common sense in fighting the virus and yet at the same time keeping balance on economic activity.
I was reading your bio. You went to Vanderbilt, correct?
I did, the football powerhouse of the South.
So you understand what football means, not just in our state because you're from Little Rock and a congressman here, but you had a taste of it in the SEC and Vanderbilt, where maybe football's a little less of a priority, but I know football's not the priority in getting our country going again, but I think you have a perspective there and understand how it's important, why it's important. It's not just important to us to have a game to watch. It's important to these local economies, particularly in Northwest Arkansas, where games will be played. Without the games, the restaurants aren't full, the hotels aren't full, they're not collecting tax revenue. The ripple effect on this by not having sports back is pretty substantial.
Oh, sports is a major driver of economic activity. Just think about all of at the high school and competitive level before you even head off to college. The soccer tournaments, the tennis tournaments, the basketball tournaments. These are big business in our towns as people travel to play. So we've got to figure out a way to do that in a safe way from a public hygiene point of view. I bet we figure it out. This is America. We're innovative. We have ingenuity. We're going to figure this out. We're going to get our kids safely out to play college sports and high school sports, and we're going to figure out a way to let people watch that in a safe way. And I'm convinced we will. That's the way we are. We've got to have more testing, but we're going to have therapeutics. We're going to have a vaccine, and we're going to bring this country back. It will, as I say, not be uniform across the board, and it will have some baby steps before we get to full speed, but we're headed that direction.
All right, indulge me one selfish one here on the way out. Last question. Any advice for me on what to tell the homeschool teacher at my house as my wife tries to homeschool a 10 and an 8-year-old? Any advice at all how to keep this ball of wax together?
Well, number one, don't involve you in it. Keep you away from it.
That's good advice.
But no, our moms and dads, man, they're heroes as they're helping our kids through this school year. And I know those kids are excited about trying to get back to their friends and their activities, and that'll come soon enough. And I hope our principals and our administrators find ways for our seniors to celebrate their senior year at the end here. I don't know what that'll look like, but again, American ingenuity. We can figure it out.
He is Congressman French Hill of the 2nd Congressional District here in Arkansas. French, I really appreciate you spending some time for us.
Thanks, Tommy.
Hey, thanks.
Absolutely.
Go Hogs.